So here we are at the house. It is after RSA. It's been a crazy week and a half. What's on your mind? What's the takeaway? We probably have several.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like this week there was a lot of fun, but also you and I had the opportunity to go to quite a few events, and there was less FUD at those events. I feel like, and some real innovation that we saw, which surprisingly was off the RSA show floor. I think, right?
Yeah, and it seems like that's like the big lesson we learned is like how do we figure out how to do more of that next year
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and less of like the I feel like how long have we been doing this? Like 15 years or something?
yeah, yeah,
And at first it's like how do you get into the we're not going to name vendors, but how do you get into the big vendor conference
yeah,
that has like the best music and the best
yeah. The
like
big parties and stuff
yeah,
like
the
that.
big
Yeah,
party.
yeah,
And now we're just like how can we see our friends go
yeah,
to like an event that's like smaller um I don't know. It's not necessarily that it's harder to get into, but it seems like that's where the better conversations happen.
yeah. RSA is like everybody trying to grab like a mic, right, and scream as loud as they can and get people to listen to whatever. And the parties are a mechanism for that. The advertising on the show floor, the booth, and everything. But I think that more and more as we go on, there's satellite events which aren't at Moscone, and they're usually held at like companies' offices if they have the space,
Yep.
or like a Airbnb or like some kind of rental thing, and uh, and they're very on specific topics. They're not generalized. They're very specialized usually. And so we went to quite a few of those this week, and that ended up being, at least for me, it ended up being like the kind of jewel of the week, right? Like I did a ton of speaking and stuff, but I learned the most, and I felt the most impressed and kind of like hopeful from those events. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so we both did a bunch of like talks and panels and stuff like that. I went to three of yours. Um, yeah, some really, really good stuff. And that was a pretty new talk that you put together about
yeah,
the methodology stuff. That was really cool.
yeah, yeah,
And then I would say that the big thing was yesterday, right?
yeah, yeah.
That
So,
was like the funnest thing, dude.
oh yeah, by far. So yesterday was the OpenAI Security Research Conference, their first ever one, and there's about 100 people there, I would say, and talking about everything from protecting AI agents from attack to automating security workflows with AI. And this was like no BS, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is like academics talking about things that were brand new, new methodologies, new ways to train agents, new evals, new everything. We saw some new models dropped
Yeah.
in that thing. We can't really talk about it, but
Yeah.
yeah, we saw some really cool stuff. And then also, just like it was kind of crazy who was in that room. And we got to sit like a couple feet away from Sam Altman, ask him questions.
Hmm.
He did a Q&A. Matt Knight, the CISO of OpenAI, was answering questions. Ian, who's a good friend of ours was opening questions.
Yep.
So yeah, it was really open in feeling and in kind of like crowd. Everybody was like having good conversations around it. And I feel like I learned a ton from that con in specific.
Yeah. More than like the whole week and a half before.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I had a really good one that was like secondary to that, which was I went to Airbnb's offsite
Mm.
AI thing, and so they did it one day at their offices where they brought in speakers, and a mutual acquaintance of ours, Keith, spoke there on a panel about AI and security, and that one was interesting because you get the I felt like you got at the OpenAI thing, you were at the cutting edge of research, and at the Airbnb one, I felt like I was at the cutting edge of implementation from a point of view of like businesses, right? Because like at the academic level, at the OpenAI one, and even the enterprises there, the people who are talking about at the cutting edge, and they're also well funded and they're incentivized to do some really cool research, right? At the Airbnb one, it was more companies talking about their implementation workflows, how they were using AI in the
Like on
enterprise,
the ground.
yeah, on the ground, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it was a different view, but I thought it was really cool. Like Adobe talked about like their architecture for their agent-based security vulnerability management system. Google was there talking about some stuff, and it was just it was really cool. So,
Yeah, so you gave the talk at OpenAI as well. So just give like an overview of like the talk, like the
yeah, yeah,
methodology and stuff.
yeah. So I do this class called Attacking AI, which you've been to,
Hmm.
and the whole class is basically it's my methodology for AI pen testing. And when I say AI pen testing, people are like, "Oh, you mean AI red teaming?" And I actually don't. So what I find, at least visiting and talking to other experts, is that AI red teaming has been around for a long time, and they have cemented that term, and that is usually about attacking the model, right? Like the model in place can speak harm, can speak bias, it can tell you how to cook meth, and that is stuff that happens in this one vertical of attacking AI, which is the model. When you do an AI pen test, you not only have to assess the model and what it'll say to your users, but you have to assess the implementation of the model. You have to assess everything else it's hooked up to, like all of the DevSecOps tools that do logging and observability and all this other stuff around it. And so it ends up being a hybrid web test, an API test, and then also AI red teaming. And then also now you have, in order to get these systems to do things for you, like agents that are hooked up to tools and APIs and stuff like that, you also have to get them to accept prompt injection through security gates, which is like classifiers and guardrails. So the talk was basically our methodology at a high level on the whole pen testing process, which has 7 steps. And then the second part was our prompt injection taxonomy, which is really like a taxonomy to sneak attacks through classifiers and guardrails. And so we open sourced a tool about a month ago. It's called the Arcanum Prompt Injection Taxonomy, and it goes through all of these tips, tricks to do that. And so we split it up into 4 levels. One is, or we call them 4 prompt injection primitives. One is your intent, like what you're trying to do to the AI system. Is it, get it to do some of those red teaming things like speak harm and bias? Or is it like get it to leak its system prompt, or do you want to jailbreak it entirely, or do you want to do something completely different, right?
Hmm.
And then we have 3 other sections. We have techniques is one of our primitives, and techniques is how you execute the attack. There's a framing. You can do narrative injection. You can do all this kind of crazy stuff. And then we have evasions, which are the idea of like kind of feels like WAF bypass, right? Where we
Yeah.
do a lot of tricky encoding, but there's even more in the prompt injection world than WAF bypass. And these get you past the security products like classifiers and guardrails. And so we talked about all those and utilities we had made, and that was the talk. So
Yeah, it's really good, and I've been watching all these, and it's absolutely the best.
thanks, man.
Yeah, and it's like it's presented really well as well. And by the way, I'm going to talk to the camera here for a second. So on the way up here, we were like, we're just going to have a conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what's hilarious?
Hmm.
We sat down and became podcasters.
I know, right?
we're like, all right, let's
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
the content,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like, so I don't know how we break out of that because it's just
I
an
think,
apt.
I think
so-
we can. I think we can.
Well, we'll just let it run,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
hopefully we like relax.
Yeah.
So what else should we cover?
So I had a whole bunch of notes on my phone, and then my phone battery died. In fact, we were trying to set up with my new DJI setup, which Julia got me for Christmas. Friend of ours, Ron Foster, recommended the whole stack, like the DJI camera and the DJI wireless mic, so I could go to like conferences and have quick interviews with people. And of course, 1, couldn't set it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, phone ran out of battery.
Almost has it set up.
Yeah,
phone
almost,
dies.
Yeah, almost have it set up and the thing dies. So we're gonna come in recording in the in the command center for you. But yeah, so I had some notes on my phone, and the notes are just like how at least I felt on the floor. You got to walk the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
yeah. So we didn't sync up till later in the week, right?
Yeah.
Like we mostly had our own stuff in the beginning, and then we synced up later. But I had a bunch of notes on my phone on how the floor was very fuddy this year, right? Like,
Mhm.
and also I had these weird moments of like justification. It was like everyone last year said they were going to completely automate all these security workflows, right? And I distinctly remember like writing these notes last year,
Mm-hmm.
and then this year I walked the floor, and everybody has changed their tune. It's like, oh, AI assisted, like power your people, scale your team, and it's like
Turns out that was harder than we thought.
yeah, turns out not possible. And I think I had this conversation with you on the drive, and it was like, even you and I have friends who are starting companies who were trying to do that. They're trying to automate a workflow, and we saw it at the OpenAI thing too.
Mhm.
People are like, yeah, we're not close to full automation yet.
Yeah.
We're very far away from a place where the models can do full automation. Even the people in the AIxCC competition who are going for those cyber reasoning systems at DEF CON, like they were like, yeah, like a lot of this is still algorithmic, tool-based automation, but with like a lot of AI glue at the, I think they said like the framework level.
Yeah.
And the framework and the organization levels are the parts where AI actually like really helps them. But hearing that from both, or like seeing that on the floor, and then also hearing it from the people at OpenAI, just like kind of cemented we're pretty far away from fully autonomous systems anywhere. I was really impressed by, I don't want to like name any vendors or whatever, but like there were some demos at the OpenAI thing that were pretty sick in the web testing world. And so that was the one I was like, oh, okay, like they're getting close. And I think you and I had
at least in that one domain.
In web testing. And then you and I were looking at some friends who were in that room, and I think they were a little crestfallen to see how far that one place had gotten with autonomous testing.
They were there live learning how far their competitors were.
So bad.
They're just like, oh, I'm excited.
Oh. Yeah. But that was cool. It was cool to get to ask Q&A of Altman. So we, it wasn't like we got one-on-one time with them, right? It was just like we were in the front row though. Yeah. I snagged us seats. I was there.
That was good.
I left lunch early to get us seats right in front. But so we're in the front row, and one of the questions to Sam Altman, if you don't know if that's head of OpenAI, CEO, and one of the questions was like, what do you what is the security thing that you worry about, right? And Sam is he's the CEO, right? So he's not in security every day, but he's a smart dude.
Yeah.
And he was talking about he was like he starts launching into his answer presupposing, he's like, yeah, so when we get these fully context aware agents that has everything about my life like written down, and has all this information and can make these really great intuitive decisions for me and stuff like that, like what happens when that gets hacked? Your whole ethos, your whole stack of who you are as a person, what you like to use, what you like to watch, what you like to hear, what you like to eat, and so many things can be intuited from that as well about you as a person. What happens when that leaks, right? And I'm just there, and I'm like hitting you. I'm like, Dan
grabs my leg.
Yeah, I'm like grabbing his leg because you've been talking about this for like 10 years, right? Like I remember the first few blogs about the first iterations of like kind of unified context or like context about your life, right? And then you do it with your TLOS files as a person, and you also do it for companies to understand the ethos of the company. And Sam just launched right into that.
Yeah.
And it was like presupposed, and I'm like, you motherfucker.
I was so excited. I'm like, can I start talking?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was great. But he said the risk is that, I guess in your analogy, the TLOS file gets leaked, right, somehow, and then people know like what you're about and how they can specifically adversarially market to you, influence you, and if you're really open with your personal assistant or your whatever ends up collecting that information, you're really open to that, like some of your like idiosyncrasies, some of your like psychological stuff.
Well, it's just like, I think the most powerful version of this is like you have your journal in there.
Yeah.
And you're just constantly complaining about your mother-in-law. Right?
Yeah.
And that gets hacked, and so now
my mother-in-law's great, by the way.
And now that becomes it becomes like an extortion email.
Yeah.
Right? Someone could just be like, "Do you want me to send this to your mother-in-law?"
Yeah.
Or just send me, $28 or whatever. And it's like, that's worth it. I don't want to have that fight at dinner.
Yeah. That's $28 seems like a good ransomware price, right? Like if any ransomware operators are listening, like I'll pay $28. That's cool.
But to your point, it's like your entire personality. It's like your entire soul. So that's a lot of content to lose.
Yeah. One of the things we were talking about in the car was how we saw so many, and it sucks, but like friends, colleagues working for these places hanging their hats on these AI features, or even companies that are completely based around Gen AI, and there's no fucking moat. There's no moat for them. Like it is going to be disrupted either by, because we went to the OpenAI thing, saw what they're doing, and
destroying moats.
Yeah, destroying moats basically, right? Like whole companies are going to go down because they had this premise of, oh, we'll use AI to do this thing. Now it's just going to become part of the model, or they're going to be just trampled by one of the big data aggregators who already has all the data to make the problem set easy to execute. I think is how I think of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jason talked about what he was presenting. Um, so what I was presenting is like this unified entity context
Yeah, the
where,
flip. Yeah,
yeah, so it's like if it's an individual, you just get all that stuff that you already talked about. And then if it's a company, you get all the way from the company goals all the way to the security goals,
yeah,
but all the HR stuff, like everything all into one bucket. And then from there, you just ask questions.
yeah.
So if you ask HR questions, is that HR software?
I think it only works with the data, right? Like the
Yeah.
data
So
about the people. Yeah,
yeah, it's like if you have HR data in there, you have security data in there, and you ask security questions and HR questions, you have HR software.
yeah.
So I feel like software verticals just go away.
I mean, I don't think they completely go away, but I think yeah, a lot of them are majorly disrupted, right? It's like, and again, it'll be the big companies that do this first because they already have that infrastructure. Like Microsoft has the whole Graph API about corporate user data. They have security data. They have God knows what other data, right? So they're poised to move quickly in some of these places that you and I play in, and it's like they will get there first because they have the ability to grab everything. And yeah, I think that for your talk, I mean, you talked about like as a meta thing, like everybody is focused on, oh, we can build these agents or AI questions, whether you're just using an API, you're actually using a planning agent or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Like whatever architecture you've chosen, use AI, and that's the important part, right? Like prompting it, getting RAG set up, like all this stuff. And you had that one slide where it was like, okay, so the agents are the big boxes and we really care about them right now, right? And then
Hmm.
they're attached to data sets and they're kind of small. And then you have the other slide, and then like it's like, no, actually, the key piece is the data in the middle.
That's
And the
right.
thing that validated it for me was you weren't at the OpenAI one, but next year we got to go and present. But
Hmm.
on this topic too, by the way.
Oh, the Airbnb one.
Yeah, the Airbnb one. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Airbnb one. Yeah. So one of the guys from Microsoft there, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about kind of the same ideas. He
Mm.
calls it like Golden Data Lake or something like that. But it was the exact same thing. He's like, hey, like the models are going to get so good that they are general software products themselves.
Right.
And so that's not the thing you should be focusing your development on. Your development or either systems architecture revamp or whatever should be on collecting the contextual data that's going to help you answer
That's
the
it.
questions, right? And so in your slide, you had like an image where the agents were really big and they were the important question, and then it's like the next slide is like, oh, actually the most important thing is the model and the agents just live on the side as small little things. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So what I had was like cybersecurity with AI around it
hmm
versus AI in the middle, and then cybersecurity and HR and productivity.
yeah, yeah,
The software verticals are kind of like rotating around it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I think you just collect all that data and ask the questions and it answers
yeah,
it.
yeah. And I think on my phone I had some notes too that um a common theme I saw. We're gonna talk a lot about AI. Sorry, I mean like a lot of I know that people want to hear about security stuff too, but a lot of this stuff in architecture of these systems, it had to be more compartmentalized than I think even some of the architectures I was thinking of. Meaning that where I thought I could ask a bunch of questions of an AI model and stuff it all into one masterful system prompt or something or user prompt. Actually, successful implementations are asking micro questions, kind of like microservices, right? They are
Mm.
asking one question of the same data of a data set, like wherever you take it in from the user or from context somewhere else, and then that's one agent, right? It's just a one question, one agent that's really good at doing that one thing, and then you have tens or hundreds of those because at least from the people I was talking to, they're like don't try to stuff it all into like one process because it can confuse different models and stuff like that. So some of the ones I saw had up to like 10 agents to like action one workflow, right? Asking individual questions, and then restitching together the output of that. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I feel slightly different there. I feel like all the data in one place is good, and so you just ask the questions. Um, but where I do see what you're saying, the AI XCC, that stuff was fascinating.
oh yeah,
Oh, you know what I really loved about that was the conversation of like, does the model matter more, or
yeah,
does the architecture of the
architecture.
system
Okay,
matter more?
so before we go into this, because that whole panel and the two talks around it were awesome.
Yeah,
They were great. But I don't think everybody knows what the AIxCC
yeah, yeah,
competition
yeah.
is.
Go
So,
ahead.
okay, so the AIxCC is this competition run by DARPA And the whole idea is that you build what's called a cyber reasoning system. And so there are both academic teams who are mostly CTF teams from the DEF CON CTF kind of ecosystem, and then there are also companies who have come to compete in this contest. And the goal is to build a system that is AI enabled that can go from taking an open source project repo with a vulnerability in it, finding the vulnerability through static analysis, building an exploit, testing the exploit to see if it works in the wild, patching the exploit, and keeping the service up and running.
Yeah.
So it's got to do both offense and defense, and they get scored on multiple different facets of that. And I think Dan Guido from Trail of Bits was telling us last night the top, like they've been giving out prizes every year. So last year was the semifinal rounds, and 5 teams made it to the semifinals. It's like 3 CTF teams and 2 companies, of which Trail of Bits is one, and my alma mater, Shellfish, is one. And then now I think grand prize will be, he said like 532 million, so
Something like
5
that.
million, 3 million, 2 million, or something like that. Might be
432.
432 or something like that. So first place gets 4 million, second place gets 2 million, and at the end of the competition, they will actually have to open source their cyber reasoning systems too.
Yeah.
Which was a really interesting conversation I had away from the table with some people. But okay, so that's leading up to it. So
Yeah.
so there was 3 talks around that competition. There was a panel with a whole bunch of leaders or people who were associated to the teams. There was a couple people who just presented on their kind of research around their cyber reasoning system, and then there was a talk by one of the DARPA representatives about why they built the competition and stuff like that. So I just wanted to tee up for you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So the thing I've been really super excited about is like these generalizations of architectures, specifically generalizing the scientific method. So I love the idea of like you have a collection of goals, you have a testing engine that basically tests, you have a hypothesis, you have problems, goals, and then the testing engine. And you can actually combine the ideas as well, like mix them and like try to find variations that are actually more effective. But it's just this life cycle of here's a cool idea, see if it works. And so what I heard listening to them, and we're not divulging anything because they were all competitors on the panel, so nobody was divulging anything secret.
Well, except for that one guy. The one guy's like, I don't really
He's
care.
like, screw it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure we're not disclosing it. It's all open. But basically the idea that you could just like keep iterating on this and you can kind of use it for anything. So what I found is really interesting was they basically said they spend all their time fixing that system, and that the model getting smarter didn't necessarily help as much as improving the system itself.
That seemed to be what a few of the audience questions were aimed at. It's like, well, as the model gets better, doesn't it make it better for you? And yeah, like you said, some of their answers were no. That the scaffolding that hooks everything together was actually the important part that they needed to develop more than the AI models, because they had scoped the AI models to do certain things. I remember one of the answers was like, one of the answers for one of the teams was like fast iteration of that model, the scientific model. It's like, hey, I think this is a cool idea for like a single agent to work on, and we're just going to test it with the limited data sets that we have and the problems that we have, and see if it works. And he was saying that was their key to success. It's just like trying so many things, different representations of code, different ways to make exploits, like cut it into pieces, do it all at once. Like, and he was just trying all kinds of stuff, and like some panned out, some didn't. So there's still a lot of learning to be there. There's also a lot of talk about how the competition also has, or at least in the first couple rounds, had a ton of handicaps. Like they couldn't use they could only use like $100 in tokens, only certain models, and only so much output and context. And so they really said that they had designed those systems to work inside those constraints, and now in the finals they don't have any of those constraints anymore. So it's like it kind of messed them up in systems design, because they were like, if we would have had no restrictions from the beginning, we might have used different models for this, or we might have done X, Y, and Z.
Right, because that was one of my questions of like, why are you building this ultra specific thing? It seems less efficient. And they're like, that's because we had so many limitations. A generic system would not have worked. You had to put all these weird constraints on it.
Yeah.
or because they had weird constraints on them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of the other things there too were that some of these security tests end up being structured more like unit tests in software, right? And
Mm.
so there are actually libraries out there that do unit testing really well, and people are like, yeah, we just started using those for
Oh
security.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
guy mentioned.
yeah.
Do
The
you remember that one?
it's like JS something. Like I don't know. I
Yeah.
have it in my notes, but my
Yeah,
phone.
me
So
too.
yeah, I'll find it. Maybe we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
Or something,
yeah.
yeah. But there was that, and then I thought interesting questions like how much, how much are you spending on building this system? And that was a really interesting question.
Oh, and nobody was building their own models.
Yeah, no, so you can't. Yeah, it's an option now in the finals
Yeah.
to bring your own model. It wasn't before, but nobody's doing it because it's
Too
just
much time,
it's
too
too much
expensive.
time, too expensive. And then like the consumers of the people who weren't competing in the competition were like, why don't you use this one off Hugging Face? And like, you don't understand. Like those things suck. Like they were like all of the open source models that deal with security data right now are horrible. And we saw two talked about this week, or one came out yesterday from Cisco,
Mm-hmm.
and then one we can't talk about, but it'll be out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And they are security trained models. And then we had Sec Gemini also talked about a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and none of these are out, so they can't use them on these teams yet. And so, maybe the next generation of security data trained, models will be good, but they just have to work with what they've got right now. And,
Yeah.
they said pretty much it all sucks. There's also a reoccurring theme of evals suck right now for security based training, basically.
Yes, Joel presented on the difficulty of evals.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, evals suck, and a lot of people were like, these are really, really hard.
Yeah.
Some people were like, they don't mean what you think they mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, the eval piece is part of that testing engine because like, how do you know if the test worked unless you have good evals?
Yeah.
But there's like so much hacking of the evals going on.
Yeah, I mean that was in my notes too. It's
Yeah.
just it's like there's people who are purposefully building in either training or logic into some of these things to score really high on these.
Yeah, they like post train with it.
Yeah, post train with it, and so they score really high on these things that I would look at as a consumer, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna go look at these these evals on Hugging Face. I forget the really popular one on Hugging Face. It's like the Chat Arena. And they'll be like, cool, how does it score on Chat Arena? And it's like, okay, it's really high. Well, that doesn't mean anything for a domain specific application of an AI, right? Like you may not need a model that's really good on Chat Arena for something else. And so one of our longtime friends, Joel Parrish, worked for me at Redspin when he first started. I'll tell a funny story here. So Matt Knight is the CISO of OpenAI, and I don't know Matt super well. I know him a little bit, and I was like, hey, like I was actually one of the guys who worked with Joel at Redspin, our first testing job together, 2 decades ago, right? And then he worked for us at HP, or with us at HP.
Yeah.
Then he went to Apple with you, and then he went to OpenAI with Matt. And so I told Matt, I said, I think I'm one of his first LinkedIn recommendations. I don't know if he kept it on his profile or not, but I called him the Kobe Bryant of web hacking. Totally. But he does everything now. Anyway, Joel gave a presentation at this was the Run Sybil side event, which was also really good.
It was.
Yeah,
it was great.
The Run Sybil side event. So Run Sybil is a company that's doing automated pen testing and pen tester assisted AI tools, basically, led by a friend of ours, Ari. And so I spoke there, gave my talk there, but Joel was right before me, and Joel gave a talk called "Your Evals Suck," and his thing was like, "Hey, look at all these evals that people are using right now. They're written in the 90s for like stack-based overflows, right? Which is not what we are facing in 2025, right?" And he just showed like multiple examples of, some of these evals are not even testing exploit generation or web testing or anything like that. They're testing just like code quality stuff, which was from the 90s, right? And it's like, why are we benchmarking these security models off of these crazy old evals? And that was the genesis of his talk. What I was sad about though is you left for dinner one talk before it ended, and the last talk was this guy who basically brought out a humanoid robot like about this tall and had jailbroken it with an exploit. He bought it from China and got it to run around the room just like screaming at the top of its lungs with like a video game track. It was so cool. Like it was amazing.
Attacking communism.
Yeah.
As a Chinese robot.
So out of context, it sounds bad, but if you've ever played the Fallout games, there is like this audio track in Fallout that like the rhetoric in that game is anti-communism, right? And so like there's like a robot that goes around, or like a character, you know, some of the enforcers run around, and all they do for 24/7 is just talk about anti-communism. So if you pull down the audio track for this game, there's a 20-minute robot rant about anti-communism. And so he put it on the jailbroken robot, and it's just running around spouting like anti-communist. And then like it was so funny because it was talking about anti-communism. It was like possible defector, and then it ran into this lady's table and spilled her drink on her, and dude, she thought it was so hilarious. Like she was like, "This is crazy!" Like, it was great. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I got to get the video for that.
yeah. So, so evals, you know, benchmarks struggle right now for domain specific applications. Everyone's kind of figuring it out, and I felt like on the show floor there was still a lot of promising of things that when I went to talk to people, it was not as first of all, no one's training their own models to do any of this, right? Like vendors will say, yeah, we have our own model. They're not. Like they're using Llama 4 or, you know, their own keys and hiding. DeepSeek.
Or just the cloud ones.
Yeah, just the cloud ones, Anthropic or OpenAI, right? And then all of the business logic magic that they promise you is happening is system prompt based. Like that's a majority of all of those products. And the value prop is no longer automation. The value prop for them is now, you know, up level or skill level your people, right? And that means basically, at least the way I you know, kind of package that is, it's good at the things we already knew it was good at, right? It's good at summarization, it's good at rewriting, it's good at pulling multiple data sets together and offering, you know, a couple insights here and there. But the actual automation of things, not quite there yet. Harder to implement. Architecture's you need to invest way more in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we knew this before going in RSA, just because you and I are actually building this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like the problem with agents and like pursuing goals is they just get confused.
Yeah.
Right? They get confused.
Overscoped, underscoped.
Yeah, especially if you have like red teaming, for example, which is the one that all our friends are struggling with the most. Because the first step, cool, I can launch the web attack. Second, okay, I could pivot a little bit.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, I've got 7 more goals to get. What have I done already? And so it starts losing context. So I think that's where it's kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
The other thing we were talking about was how the moat situation.
Yeah.
So basically, a lot of these companies that are like, we do this thing, that's what makes us special, and we're in round, you know, B or C or whatever, and we've raised all this money because we do this one thing. It's like, well, if you have the context, like I was talking about this week, if you have that context and you can ask the questions, the thing that company does is a feature instead of a company.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, as we would go around and see these different booths, they look like features.
They're gonna get karate kicked by the model vendors, and it's I mean it sucks because it is some of our friends who are making these companies, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, you can be really good at a problem and succeed better than a big model vendor or a big company that, you know, but it's got to be really good. And
maybe they just cut through so good with marketing that they get a big enough market share that they're okay.
Yeah.
But the time is like ticking. You could just hear the time ticking down between Google gets there, Microsoft gets there, one of these big players gets there.
Yeah.
And then they just start adding question modules for security or whatever.
I mean, maybe that's the golden plan, though. Maybe it's like they're not at the play to stay a long-term viable company. Just get bought by one of the big companies because they do it really well, right? Which is totally a play.
Yeah,
right?
nothing wrong with that.
Anybody wants to buy our... I'm just kidding. So
Arcanum-sec.
Arcanum-sec.com. So that could be a play for sure. I mean, other than that, though, again, same vibes as last year and the year before. I saw some products that, besides AI, are just abstractions of what someone else already does, but it's a better visualization, easier to make it work with, right? So like the Amazon ecosystem, if you're an Amazon specialist, that shit's hard to learn. Like there's so many sub tools and sub products, and it's like, and so then like you see this other company like, we make this easy. Right, like here's a nice GUI, explains everything.
Whiz,
right? And it like does everything that you want it to do. And I don't think there's a lot of moat around that either. That's just a UI revamp to a lot of the core services places. And so I saw a lot of that. It's like,
Hmm.
make your SOC easier to automate or like whatever. And it's like, okay, I get it. I get why that's attractive right now because you have that pain right now as a consumer. But that pain, I don't know if it'll be there forever, once other people figure it out. Although you can also look at case studies from Google, right? They never fixed their UI, and so like
Yeah.
Gmail could use a refresh. So yeah, I mean, yeah. I saw a lot of that. Um, was also kind of surprised just at what I perceived to be the spend at RSA this year in a time where I know security professionals like who are jobless and they have been looking for roles for months,
That's
right?
a really good point. I
And
didn't think about that.
and then just the amount of money on that floor.
It felt like 2018 or 2019.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was like top of the, you know what it almost felt like? It almost felt like, and I hadn't thought of this until just now when you said this. It feels like desperation. They're just like, spend all the money. It's like our last chance.
Yeah, it definitely felt like that with some vendors for sure. Which maybe goes into that like acquisition play is like we just make ourselves seem bigger this
Yeah.
year, we'll get acquired and it won't matter anymore, right?
Well,
Like,
well, so if you take like the macro economy or whatever, and it's just like things might get bad in the next 6 months or a year.
yeah,
We're going into RSA.
yeah,
We need to get bought.
yeah,
We need to get a bunch of customers.
yeah,
Now is not the time to go small.
yeah, yeah.
So we saw baby goats.
Yeah, we saw goats, we saw puppies.
I
live
didn't
on
see the
floor.
puppies, but I saw the goats.
There's a monster truck and an F1 Formula One car.
2018
on the floor.
again.
Yeah, I mean, what else? A giant robot, obviously at the CrowdStrike booth, like every year, giant statue. Yeah, there was. I mean, usually there's one marquee party at RSA, right? There's like one vendor who brings in like a band. So like last year, I can't remember who. I went to Deadmau5 last year, which is one of my favorites.
Mhm.
And then for like the rock crowd, they had Incubus, I think last year,
Oh,
or maybe the year before. I can't remember. This year, both Marshmello, still premier DJ, and Chainsmokers
Yeah.
were performing at different parties on the same night, which is crazy. Like,
One Sentinel One, I think.
yes, I know one was Marshmello,
Yeah.
and then I can't remember who did Chainsmokers, but
Yeah.
I think it was like Chain Guard or something. I can't remember, but yeah, I mean that's a lot of money to like buy out a nightclub for hundreds of people, have like a premier DJ play just for your corporate party, and so yeah, it felt like there was a lot of money spending, and it made me sad a little bit because like I do have friends who have been struggling to find jobs or have gotten like
Lots of
work
friends.
furloughed. A lot of friends getting work furloughed where like they're like, oh, we
They're
can't
like,
afford to pay you.
yeah,
this
we got to
much
cut
anymore."
back on
Yeah.
the salaries.
Yeah, and
because
so, yeah.
money's tight.
Yeah, it
But we need
sucks.
goats.
Yeah, we need goats. Yeah, we need goats. So that kind of sucked a little bit. I think that's a continuing pattern though. Probably that's happened every year a little bit. But
I'm worried about next year that they're just like, well, that didn't work.
yeah, I mean,
Tighten it up.
we'll see. I mean, every year you look for a vendor that you thought was cool last year,
Mhm.
and then they're not there. This year.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Someone comes out of nowhere
Yeah.
and like 4 of them just disappear.
Yeah, there was a couple last year that I was really excited that they were applying AI to document classification, and I was like, that's a perfect application of AI, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were not around this year. Either they got gobbled up or they didn't make it. So yeah.
Oh yeah, what's the one? I got a buddy who went. Oh, Sierra is the one.
Yeah,
that's, like,
Sire's the one,
doing
yeah,
it now.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the offsite events are definitely where it's at. I think if you're coming to RSA next year and we're coming, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a little bit less speaking. Honestly, I did my thing 5 times and I was pretty burnt. Again, I guess if I rewind to the beginning of the week though, B-Side San Francisco continues to be an A+ con.
Yeah.
I mean, B-Side San Francisco,
Production quality.
quality,
Quality of the content.
yeah, staff is great.
Yeah.
The villages there are cool. Even the vendor setup there is like, I just feel like it's not as nuts and in your face. I had a buddy, a mutual friend of ours, come this year. He's a person. He works at a company, and I'm not going to put him on blast, but he's a person who works at a company. He doesn't have any purchasing power, but he put on his RSA badge the company he worked for, and it's a big company. And he's getting accosted. Like he's walking down the floor, and like like someone out of the corner of their eye just like sees his badge and the name of his company, and they're like, "Hey, like, like come talk to me." And like, it was surreal for him. even after he tells them, I don't have any purchasing power, I don't make any decisions, and
Yep.
they're like, I don't care.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But B-Sides doesn't feel like that. I think that a mutual friend of ours, Clint, gave a talk on vulnerability as people and as infosec practitioners rather than vulnerabilities as like, you know, kind of we pop vulns or we
Yeah,
talk about
security,
vulnerability
yeah.
security. I really love that talk. I think it's
Yeah.
one of the best keynotes I've seen in quite a while. It will be up on the B-Sides website. You know, they eventually put everything out. So I highly suggest watching. You and I were cameoed in that talk,
Yeah,
actually.
absolutely.
Clint talked about how, you know, you and I have like this, you know, long friendship because we've worked together since we were young and
Mhm.
we've just kind of done everything together.
Yep.
And he talked about how like being a friend with you, he like felt like a little bit less than, you know, the connection we had, and he wanted that with you.
Yeah.
And how like those things are hard to talk about, right? It's
Yeah.
like, you know, your insecurities, the way you feel, but eventually if you confront them or you figure out ways to health, you know, like you'll be healthy about them and have conversations with your friends and say X, Y, and Z, it really can give you peace of mind, superpowers, make you feel better.
Yep.
And so like you and I were referenced in that part of that talk, and I thought that was it was really great. Actually, I actually like I think I cried at the end because he had like a couple like little messages in there, and
Yeah, yeah.
he was like, hey, you're enough, right? Like what you're doing is enough, and all of
And it
us,
matters.
and it matters,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And all of us, you know, just trying. I feel like everyone in security has a little bit of like they just want to like help the world a little bit, right?
Yep.
Like not everyone, but a lot of people. That's why they get into it because it is easy to make that line to like, hey, I know this is a small thing, this computer stuff, but in a way, I am a superhero trying to help the world, right?
Yep.
And but you can get so wrapped up because there's so much stuff, right?
Mhm.
There's so many domains, there's new research in domains all the time. You feel behind on education.
Mhm.
You can start to get that imposter syndrome. And like at the end, Clint actually gave out cards
That he
that
had signed.
that he had signed. He had signed
Yeah, yeah.
hundreds of cards hand by hand. And I think I have one in my wallet, and I put mine in my wallet, and it just like says "You are enough," signed by Clint, or like you know some inspiring message.
Yep.
That was, I mean, like Clint's like amazing person, but that talk was awesome. So yeah,
Yeah, and a lot of courage to do a talk that's about people
yeah,
when like the natural play is like AI and security V2,
yeah,
which would
yeah.
absolutely
It would
crush.
crush. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And he's like, no, I'm going to do this thing because I think this message matters, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Clint's a phenomenal human, and he did the girlfriend meme of you and me, like the guy, like the guy's walking down
Yeah.
the center of the street, and he like looks at like the one girl
The
passing when he
other.
has like a girlfriend, and the other girlfriend's like you know that meme,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I got to be the hot girl, so
That's right.
you know I've never been the hot girl, so like
You are now.
yeah, yeah, so that was cool. What else happened this week?
I don't know. What's your big takeaway? I feel like we talked about this a little bit. I feel like the big takeaway for us, and keep in mind that if you're coming to this like brand new, like you don't necessarily want to do it this way because we're getting lessons after have done this for a couple of decades, but we're like more get away from the center of the mass and move into like the smaller events
Yeah,
where your friends are going to be
yeah,
at to talk more about the ideas as opposed to like where can I get the food, where can I get the parties and the music.
yeah, and that I mean this thinking applies to Black Hat and DEF CON too. I think yeah,
Absolutely,
it's
the
like
whole scene.
it's at first it's cool when you're young and we're old, so
Yeah, yeah.
to go to the parties and be part of like the loud noises, and then now you kind of want to uh ration your time with you know people who you really want to spend time with and have conversations with, and
Yep.
be in smaller settings where it's not so loud and like real research is going on, and that was the dichotomy for me was like so much of a difference between what people were saying on the floor about how things worked with AI. And then when I got to the Airbnb summit and the OpenAI summit, like, no, these are real people working on these problems, and here are the real problems.
Yeah.
And here also their success stories, but also their failure stories. Like,
Yeah.
we thought this would work, it totally did not work. We
Yeah.
had to go back to manual process in vulnerability management. Oh man, the conversations on vulnerability management this week were crazy about using AI and the predispositions I had about what I thought was a good AI assisted vulnerability management not platform, but like architecture,
Hmm.
versus what some people like Google have built, and some people like Adobe did a great talk on it, and then some people talked about it in the OpenAI conference. And so like it turns out some of the things that we thought AI would be able to do are not the force multipliers. It turns out to be sending emails or like actioning tickets automatically,
Go to where
or
they are.
yeah, go to where they are, right? We talked about this in the
Hmm.
car. It's like it's I had some assumptions that we'd be able to do like full stop, full prompt, like to nuts to bolts send our vulnerabilities that come through a bug bounty or through static code analysis or through AppSec testing or through any different number of where we get vulns, right? And it would system would work. The value of the AI would be the rating, the conglomeration of all that into tickets. And it turns out that some people, at least, who have done it, to actually like that doesn't work super well.
Mm.
They are stripping all of that contextual data about ratings, making their own rating systems,
Yeah.
and just pulling out the text from the advisories, from the threat feeds, from the pen test reports,
Yeah.
from all that stuff, re-rating them themselves with custom systems that have nothing to do with CW or CVE, CWS.
Yeah, that's the thing. These rating systems are trying to give us the context of the vuln.
They don't have any
They
context to our
don't know
business.
anything
They
about
don't know
us.
anything about us. Yeah.
So I love this idea. Just strip it out
Yeah.
and then re-add the context from the
Yeah.
company onto
Mhm.
the vuln.
And then
And that's the priority.
And then the thing that the Google guy said, I'm going to say Google person or guy or whatever, but because I don't remember anybody's names, but
Mhm.
he was saying that like, so after you do that, the whole vulnerability management scaled by AI only works if you have a really good asset management
Yep.
platform. And we've been talking about this for years, like
Yeah,
external
I did that
assets.
thing in 23 when I was at Robinhood.
Yeah.
Asset management as the center of vuln management.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that you presented at the Black Hat CISO Summit,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So yeah, and this turned out to be true for them, right? It's like this program does not work unless you have had your balanced breakfast of consolidating all your data sources where vulnerabilities come in,
Yep.
and then having a tremendous asset management program, like knowing where, like having for lack of a better word, like having knowledge of where all the systems are, what they are, who owns them, what
Yeah.
teams action them,
Yep.
where the repos are. And that's not like, that sounds trivial to some companies who are small. Like if you're a startup, you're like, yeah, of course I know where my repos are and who
Yeah.
owns the thing. But when you get to a company that's the scale of Google or Apple, right?
Oh, yeah.
There are hundreds, if not like Ubisoft too. We had productions, which are video games, everywhere.
Yep.
And it's just not simple anymore. Like
Yep.
you lose a thread on an app, and then it just exists out in the wild, and then someone finds it via your bug bounty, and they're like, hey, I RC'd this thing, and you're like, I have no idea what that is. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, I don't see it anywhere, I don't know who owns it. And then you spend all of this toil time. That was a reoccurring term, toil, right?
Oh, yeah.
You spend all this toil time to like figure that out, and you should be architecting your program from the beginning with really good asset management instead of spending that toil time later.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely dealt with that at Apple because it's like you put out the state of the system, and a week later, it's like nothing like that.
Yeah, that's
Nothing
true.
like that.
Yeah. The question I had for you when we were in the car was, it's like, okay, so you're really big on capturing context in markdown files, which is the TLOS idea.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do TLOS for yourself personally as a person, or you could TLOS as an organization, right?
City, country, planet.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. Put down your ethos, your goals, your systems, your owners, into Markdown or maybe JSON or something like that, whatever you want to use, right?
Whatever.
And my question was kind of like, okay, so Bob, who handles Celsius app, right, whatever, he leaves, and like, who is responsible for updating the context file to include those changes? Is there a system that you prefer, or like a method, or is it just that you have to go in there and help them and update that, or is there like, do they have to hire a specific person to run the TLOS file and make sure everything stays in line when they change their company vision or something like that?
Yeah. So it's going to depend on the implementation. So the way I'm doing it commercially is for this thing called Same Page, which I'll be talking about later. But I think the future of this is this.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about Same Page right now. Let's heat up. I mean, you might as well, right? Come on.
No.
Oh, come on.
No. I mean, it's the concept of the talk. It's just unified context. No. I appreciate it, but no. But no, I think this just becomes a unified IT product.
Okay.
Uh,
So
So,
IT maintains it.
so I think that anybody who builds anything from like an ice cream truck business to a security program to I want to be a governor,
Mm,
they're going to have a core system,
mm.
which is all assets, all context, all goals,
Okay.
everything.
So one thing that I didn't realize until starting to build very and I'm not afraid to admit it, vibe coded things, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
so I now have superpowers because I understand code, right?
Yep.
I understand architecture of code. I understand problems in code. I understand security, but I've never been a front end developer.
Yeah.
I couldn't sit down with React and build a pretty website. If you put me on a modern development team,
Yep.
I would die.
Yeah. Same.
Um,
Same.
but because I know about code, I know how to script, and I know the concept of, pretty much every language from assessing it in security, I can now build fantastic things very quickly.
Same.
The thing is that I think I've realized in that world is that PRDs, like product requirements documents, are necessary for so many more things than I ever thought, right? Like, and so the idea, the way it connects to vibe coding is like whenever I do a new project now, the first thing I do is I verbally talk to my browser with a Chrome extension into an AI model with a whole bunch of notes about just kind of what I want the system to do, what tools it's tying together, like how it's presenting data, why we're even making this, what problem it solves.
Yep.
And that's just verbal garbage coming out of my mouth, right? Like I'm just having conversation. I could take a podcast like this and like
Yeah.
do that. And then I'm feeding into a whole bunch of AIs to make a product document with requirements in it. And then I'm creating a technical architecture document as well, which is why we are choosing the frameworks that we're using, why we're choosing the tools.
Yep.
Never deviate from these. And
Right.
so those two things in concert, especially in the vibe coding or AI assisted coding
Mm-hmm.
world, have helped make my software infinitely better and help the AI IDEs stay on track with
Yeah.
the mission, with the
Yeah. Because
technology.
when it loses its context and loses its mind and basically gets erased,
Yeah.
it just goes back to that. So
Yeah.
it's over.
Yeah, and in vibe coding, you can have such. I mean, that we're going on a rat hole now, but I
No,
mean,
it's fine.
in vibe coding, you have that sidebar, right? And that you can stay in that conversation for a long time and not realize that you're hitting the point of where needle in the haystack is not. You're not getting good value, and you need to
And they're
restart
also
that
like $15
conversation.
queries.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I
It's
mean, yeah,
$15,
yeah,
$24.
yeah,
Okay, wait a minute. So if
yeah,
I do 4 of these, that's $100.
yeah. I mean, I was talking about it with some friends in Discord, and it's like, or in the Signal chat, and I'm like, how much are you guys spending on your AI subscriptions a month? Because mine is approaching a car payment, and it's like,
Totally.
I know it's worth it, but it's still kind of painful to add another
Yeah,
car
yeah.
payment, So, I mean, I'm using everything. I'm using Gemini. I'm using OpenAI's ecosystem. I'm using Claude's ecosystem. I still have Perplexity. I'm a really hype user of Manus right now. I love Lambda Chat's implementation of DeepSeek because they host it on the internet and I can scrape it with Puppeteer, Playwright.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm just hitting everything for
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of N8N for backend and Bedrock. Still use Fabric. Like most of the models.
Oh yeah, when I'm on the
Yeah,
command line using Fabrics the
yeah.
way. Yeah.
Favorite models right now. For me, it's 2.5,
2.5
2.5 Pro for a Gemini,
Oh yeah, Gemini is on fire
and then
right now.
O3
Okay.
with memory.
With memory. Okay. So I use O3 with memory for writing tasks. I think that's really good at writing and researching tasks. I actually am one of the believers that the biggest DeepSeek model is one of the best models that I've ever seen for research tasks. Even though it doesn't have search enabled, I use it. It's exposed for free through lambda.chat. So you can go and so like you have to think about there were different releases of R1, DeepSeek R1, and most of us played with the middle implementations, like the
Yeah,
like the
not the full
56B, not the
size.
full 617 billion parameter
Right.
one, right? They have that hosted on their architecture for free,
Yeah.
and it is fantastic to use. And I find that model to be really, really good.
Let me check Grok real quick.
Yeah, let's see what Grok is running. I don't think they're even running 617. I think you just pull down right there on the compound based mini where it says right there.
Mm.
Oh,
Oh, here we go.
yeah, see. So they're doing DeepSeek 70,
Yeah,
70B.
no comparison
No,
to
yeah,
600.
601 billion parameters. So, yeah, so I use that model. It is a really good research model, but it doesn't have search enabled, right? So that's it's missing. And then so Gemini DeepSeek 617, and then I really get a lot out of when I code, 3.7 on Claude is really good. Although it started to go kind of haywire recently.
I switched off. I went from 3.5 to 3.7, and I liked it a lot. But
yeah,
2.5 from Gemini came right after that,
it did. Yeah,
and I was just like, damn, that's really good.
Yeah.
And then 0.3 roughly same time.
yeah.
So I've kind of been messing mostly with those.
That's the problem. Is like I want to consolidate subscriptions. Like I want to just say, oh, I'm just gonna stick with this, but I can't, because if you're at the cutting edge of using this stuff every day, it's like you want the best model for the best thing all the time.
And there's like 2 releases per week, so
Yeah,
you're just like
it's nuts.
jump.
Yeah. And so you end up spending somewhere in the order of $400 to $600 a month for all your AI subscriptions. Not including your. I mean, that's including everything. That's including your direct chat interfaces that you're paying for, like ChatGPT implementations, but also your API calls, and then also your subscription to Klein or not Klein, but Windsurf or what's the other one? I use Windsurf, so I always forget the name of the other one. The one with C.
Klein.
No, oh yeah, Klein, but
Cursor.
The other one. Cursor. There you go, Cursor. Yeah. So you have subscription to one of those two, and it's like, okay, yeah, now I'm paying quite a bit.
I just realized a link between vibe coding and the AI competition.
Mhm.
Which model are you using versus which scaffolding do you have in the form of giving that cursor rules prompt?
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, I strongly believe, and AI Jason talks about this. I forget his name. Is it Jason Wong? Is that his name?
I know, but he's brilliant. Love that guy.
Yeah. So he makes like really practical videos.
Yeah.
So he basically put out some stuff, cursor rules, like a single prompt that can generate that full PRD with a checklist.
Yeah.
And the model actually goes and checks things off the list.
Yeah, I do the same way. So I use Berman's or the AI guy. Is it Berman? I can't remember. What is his last name? The AI content creator. You were on his show. He talked about Fabric.
Matthew Berman.
Matthew Berman. Yeah. Okay. So Matthew Berman did a show on this as well.
Yep.
And he had a set of questions that he put in the show, but he never like released a GitHub or a gist or anything like that. Where
that's the thing I love about AI Jason. He's like, boom, it's on GitHub.
Yeah, it's on GitHub, right? So I went and grabbed Matt Berman's, and I just tweeted it out. Like I had AI transcribe and then pull up the questions, and then now in that prompt to the AI, I'm like, here's the structure of a PRD I want to build. I need you to ask me relevant questions to fill in the thing, and then I have it ask me the questions, and then we have a chat.
So it builds the PRD based on your interview.
Based on my interview.
Nice.
I tell it to interview me.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
then once we're done, then it's like, cool, do you want me to stitch all this together into a fully functioning PRD? I'm like, yes. And then we move on to the architecture section. And then those live as markdown files in my project. And so when I need to start a new chat, because I know the context window is filling up for Windsurf, I just start a new chat and I say, reanalyze our core architecture and our PRD, so that you understand everything about this project and the README that we built.
Yeah.
And then it's like I'm starting again with great context. And, obviously you need to hook it up to version control as well. So if anything goes haywire, gets deleted, you can snapshot back. But those are some pro tips for the vibe coding people out there.
Yeah. I've got a rule where I basically say in the cursor rules, if I say this, it means go and review.
Oh, okay, cool.
So if I feel like it's going wonky,
yeah,
it's just like a reset.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention one thing.
You don't say it like make it so, like Picard.
You could do that. Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to give a little shout out to Caleb Sima for a post he did before RSA, where he was complaining about panels just like being kind of empty.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about this, the whole reason these long form conversations, because we're just riffing.
Yeah.
And we're just thinking of stuff. But ideally, the stuff we're thinking of is stuff that was new to us. Therefore, it's going to be new to them.
Yeah.
And what happens with so many talks and so many panels, and I think this is like a meta conversation that we just really need to solve. Obviously, for us as content creators, which I think we do a good job.
Yeah.
But I would say the industry needs to solve this, is don't just come on and be like, here's the thing, Jason, like the landscape is changing. You know,
Yeah.
AI is changing everything. It's
Yeah.
changing the game.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, it's just changing the game. We're like, all right, that's all the time we got.
Yeah, everybody, let's go to lunch.
Yeah, so it's like two people reflecting backwards, or maybe a panel of four,
Yeah.
and they're just reflecting back these things that we've heard for the last few months or a
Yeah.
couple of years.
Yeah.
It's like, was it Matt or somebody we know was like, if I hear one more person say, the attacker only has to be right once
Yeah.
and the defender has to be right all the time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
we learned this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So the
yeah.
first time we heard it, it was hella smart.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
And now it's just like so many panels, so many conferences, so many talks are just that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that there's no contention anymore on panels. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, even the ones at OpenAI, when we went to that, there was like towards the end, it was a lot of like, yeah, we agree. And so I think at the end, I was like trying to spice it up a little bit. Like, I wasn't the moderator, but I asked a question. I'm like, who's your most feared competitor?
That
in the
was like one of the
competition?
best questions.
And everybody was like, oh shit. And then like, the guy at the end
That was one
like,
of the best
well,
questions.
it's definitely Dan and Trail of Bits. And Trail of Bits is like, oh, we're really scared of like whoever. And
Tyler,
the guy at the
yeah.
end, he's like, I don't know. I'm just doing my best over here.
Yeah. Trying to survive.
Yeah, trying to survive. And yeah, I wish there was a little bit more contentious. And you can talk about that. I've had interview panelists before, or the people leading, whatever, moderators or whatever.
Yeah.
I've had them be like, hey, I'm going to ask this question, and if you all answer the same fucking thing, I'm going to boot you off the panel. And I love that. I'm like, yeah.
So another of our mutual friends actually engineers this into the thing.
Oh, really?
Sasha.
Oh, yeah, he does.
So Sasha is like, look, if I'm going to be honest,
I didn't get to see Sasha for more than 10 minutes this whole
me neither.
trip.
I just
like all of us.
He was a blur.
Yeah, he was a blur. Yeah.
But like, he's like, if I sit on this panel, I'm going to engineer thing. I need to know what you all believe.
Yeah.
So I can find something I disagree with.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is going to be the dumbest panel ever.
And it works on me wonderfully because like when people don't agree with me, I just get angry inside.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm like, no, you're wrong.
We're good at this. We're good at having a good,
Yeah. No,
having a go.
I was, while doing RSA, I was tweeting a little bit on Twitter, and I happened to have a friend who was rooming with me who was doing security research. So he found a 0 day, basically, reported it to the vendor, but a whole bunch of individual companies that implemented the software, and they have not yet fixed the bug. So he goes out to all these bug bounty programs and submits it, and also a whole bunch of vulnerability disclosure programs.
Mm-hmm.
And he submits it to these vulnerability disclosure programs, and he comes back to me because I'm a former bug bounty guy, right? And he's like, yo, is it like like normal, like the crits that I got for people who have bounties? I got 50 points on the platform for HackerOne, but I only get 7 for responsibly disclosing it without getting paid. He's like, that's weird. So I go out and tweet about it, and admittedly, I didn't tweet right. I don't think. Like, I definitely went out and kind of sensationalized it a little bit. I'm like, this sucks. Like, give the guy more than 7 points, right? But the bug bounty community, of which are a lot of my homies, like basically jumped on me, and it like got in my head a little bit. But then I managed to like push it down a little bit. But like, the bug bounty. This is a huge thing this week. Huge discussion is just like, VDP is evil. VDP is labor exploitation. VDP is everything wrong with bug bounty. Jason, you're the worst person in the world for promoting that anyone ever even think about VDP. And so then I came out with this post. A guy was trying to debate this with me, and he's a smart dude, smart bug hunter. I have respect for him, but he like said one sentence, and it felt a little aggressive to me, and I was just in that mood, and I was like, fuck it, block. Like, and I just blocked this dude. And then he like went off the deep end and started like posting more and more, and like, just, I can't believe Jason, Turned out he had been to my class too, which I felt bad about. And so I unblocked and tried to have a conversation, but just like, there's so much vitriol on this topic of labor exploitation. So I went out and I said, hey, I believe in VDP, actually. I believe there are plenty of companies who on-ramp with a VDP and then start paying for bugs. I have seen them. I have worked at BugCrowd. This is not a fictional thing, right?
Yeah.
Some companies are too big that if they were just to open up, I mean, Ubisoft was one of these companies, right? If you would have opened up a bug bounty for everything on Ubisoft, all scope, all classifications of bugs, they would have went bankrupt, right?
Yeah.
And so they had to start with the VDP to burn down a little bit of the stuff, incentivize, people to come on, and then eventually move into a paid program.
Yeah.
And then they ended up shutting down the program. But a lot of companies work like that, and no one's forcing you to work on a VDP, right? Like I wasn't
Can you, for everyone, just give an overview of the difference between the two?
Yes. Okay. So a bug bounty program is a program where you pay for bugs, right? Like a researcher on the internet comes out and says, "I found a web application vulnerability with your software," and you've said, "Yes, I'm paying for these," usually on a platform like BugCrowd or HackerOne or Integrity, and they come on the platform, they submit the bug, you pay them, right? VDP is called a vulnerability disclosure program, where you as a company don't have like an email box or anything like that to take in vulnerabilities, and so usually the platform handles it for you, and you show up on their platform as a card that says, "Hey, we do not pay for anything, but if you find something, report it to this program," right?
Yeah.
And we will give you props. We'll take
Find some kind of reward, but we don't have a mountain of cash.
yeah, we don't have a amount of cash, right? And it feels like bug hunters are this guy was trying to cite like Dino DeZovi's like no more free bugs thing, and like, listen, man, I was there when that happened. I mean, I don't know if this guy was even born then, but when he's citing this, but I was there when No More Free Bugs was happening, and I
Yeah.
don't think that was the core message completely. I think it was that, like, there should be fairness in disclosure, there should be fairness in credit of vulnerabilities, there shouldn't be people suing each other when vulnerability research is discussed. And so I wrote this big long thing, and I just got railed this week, like by my own community, and I felt really attacked, and I was like, fuck it, I'm not gonna do bug bounty stuff anymore. Like, I'm
Yeah.
hosting the HomCon, and it's like you guys are some angry people. Like, if you
Yeah.
don't want to work on VDPs, don't work on VDPs, right? But like the other thing I didn't say in that thread was that a lot of people I mentor, they don't have their foot in the door yet. They haven't
Yeah.
had a job yet, right? And so when they go to interview, if they have bug bounty experience, that's awesome. But usually when you're starting, to find a bug on a bug bounty is much harder than to find a real bug on a VDP, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much more scope. Not everybody is testing on the VDPs. They're see something, say
Yeah.
something, right? So if you find something on a VDP and you're doing stuff like Portswigger Labs and Hack the Box and
Yeah.
all that stuff, it's like that shows me as an employer, well, they've got the skills, right? They have the skills, they just need a chance, right? And I didn't.
It's receipts. It's
Yeah,
like
it's receipts,
yeah.
yeah. And I didn't even want to go into that part of the argument on Twitter because I'll get flamed more. But yeah, I mean, it goes to show that like I drew that corollary from the panel thing you were talking about,
Yeah.
right? It's like you can't just agree with everyone. You have to have a point of view. We were
Yes.
talking about this in content creation, right? Like,
Totally.
so here's this idea, and this is also off the beaten path, but for the listeners, but Dan and I are content creators, right? And we are lucky enough to have 25, 30 years in the industry almost, like, and so 20 years for me, and so
Can I stop you
yeah,
even
yeah,
before?
yeah.
So I have like a pre-point for this.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
So, well, make sure you keep this thread because
Okay,
this is an
yeah.
amazing thread. So I want to make a quick point. I can't believe this is going in this direction. But so a lot of young people come to us and they're
Yeah.
like, how do I become a YouTuber?
Yeah,
How do I become a content creator on Twitter or whatever?
Yeah.
The first thing I tell them, which is exactly your point, learn something so that you have an opinion about it.
yeah,
Because I do create content and you
Mhm.
create content, but I wouldn't say that fundamentally that's what we are.
Mm-mm.
There are a lot of people who are content creators, and I feel like that is their actual job. So they are looking for content.
Mhm.
Whereas we are building and doing things.
Mhm.
You got a training company, you got a consulting company.
Yeah.
You're doing that, the content falls out of it,
Yes, correct, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that is so key, especially for young people. You have to like get good at something.
yeah. Well, it's not even you. It's not that you have to get good at something. It's that you have to do something.
Have an opinion, have a path, try something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the content emerges from that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, so Clint, our friend at SemGrep, he did an interview with me later this week on the SemGrep blog that'll come out in a week or so. But it was mostly about career stuff. And what I was telling him is like, it's like when you're new, it's really hard to show that portfolio of work, and you can do it with VDPs, you can do it with bug bounty, you can do it with CVEs, you can do it by taking try hack me and getting certs and stuff like that. But some of that stuff is paid work, right?
Yep.
Or is paid, like some of that training's paid. And when you really have nothing, you're going to have to just focus on the free resources. But one of the things that you can do with nothing at all is start up a blog.
Yeah.
And talk about your learning experience.
There you go.
And you said good, I'm going to challenge with you just have to do something.
Yeah,
Do something and write about it and have an opinion
totally.
and talk about your learning experience. And so like when I read a blog about
And be vulnerable.
yeah,
And
be
just like
vulnerable. Yeah.
like you were saying earlier, talk about the bad, talk
Yeah.
about the good.
Yeah. And so like when I see a blog on someone who's writing about their first usage of using Burp Suite, right? And it's like, yeah, I've read that blog 800 times, but I haven't read it from you.
That's right.
And you're talking about like your thought process and like, learning this tool, or you're doing a YouTube video on it or something like that. I go look at that stuff in the interview pipeline, right? It's an additional thing in your portfolio, and it always makes me feel good to watch
Yeah.
somebody trying to learn something, and I feel like, so it's not that you have to be good at something, it's just you have to do something, and that becomes your content, I feel
Yeah,
like.
and don't worry about overlaps.
Yeah, everyone says the
Because
same thing.
Jason and I are so similar.
Yeah.
If we tried to make the same piece of content, we wouldn't.
And then we get angry at each other.
Because we have we have like we have very similar, but it's still going to come out different.
Yeah.
In a Jason-y way and a Daniel way.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have to worry that someone already wrote the burp tutorial.
Yeah, exactly. Right? The other one I was talking about is I think I was trying to explain is that in content creation also, I mean, like, I don't know if we call ourselves content creators or whatever.
I mean, we definitely are, but it's not like my main identity.
Yeah. But I see so many people being content creators for the point of being a content creator and struggling to find content because they're not doing work.
There you go.
Doing research.
That's it. That's my point. Yeah.
On top of that, not having an opinion. And I think that
that's like the worst.
Yeah, I think that goes into the panel thing we were talking about, right? It's like you need in this industry, if you're going to be doing content, an opinion of some sort. You need a voice. And it doesn't have to agree with everyone. You could be the antithesis. Like if you want to be the anti-Jay Haddix guy and say that like VDPs are, exploitative work and like, Jason,
at least you're saying something.
At least you're saying something. Like I respect that guy, like I'm
right.
like he has an opinion, hurts my feelings a little bit, but he has an opinion, you know, and it's like
especially given what you've done for Bounty.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, having an opinion is almost more important than content these days. I think content comes from your opinion. So
100% correct. Another way that gets described is taste.
Yeah.
So imagine this. I talk about this a lot, but it's like a few years from now, or maybe months, who knows how fast this stuff is moving. But you just, like you do with narration of code, you're talking to cursor, and on all these screens, it's popping up. You mean like this? You mean like this? Or you're having it make you an anime series.
Yeah.
Or, a book or whatever. Do you mean like this? And you're just swiping through. No, not like that. Not like that. That's the one I like.
Yeah, that's the one I like, yeah.
And that taste, this reminds me of Rick Rubin, actually. So he produced Slayer, a whole bunch of rap albums. He's like the most famous producer ever.
Okay.
Doesn't play an instrument.
Really?
Can't read music. Plays no instruments.
Wow.
And they say, how do you get hired to do this? He's like, I know exactly what I like.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah. That's
so
amazing.
To your point, like opinion, taste.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking in the car about the branding for Arcanum for my thing. And one of the most freeing things for me being the CEO of this company now is I have complete control over branding, marketing, message, what we do and do not do to enable those things, right? Like our strategy. I'll give you an example. And it's a freebie for any company out there. But where all of your marketing teams are telling you, like, you should be, chasing, inbound leads, and you're going to use BDR based marketing and stuff like that. That's all dead. Like, if you want to be a InfoSec company in 2025, it is influencer marketing, and it is especially SME based marketing. And this is a lost art. Training someone at your company, like when you're sales engineers, or maybe you're small enough, it has to be your CTO or CEO, but them going to conferences, and this is what I do, and speaking on topics, not selling anything, contributing to the community of security. We get so many warm leads from this, dude. My talks, like I get 5 or 6 people right after my talks are like, let's work together. Give me your card. Like, I can't. And
you're not even saying.
I'm not saying anything.
Julia is.
Yeah, Julia is Julia, my wife, is like, hey, we sell things, but that's our vibe. Is we go to conferences. I mean, I'm traveling to one a month, and it's a lot of travel, and it's hard. But marketing people have been pushing this away, like, oh, well, we have to like train the expert, and we have to set up the event, and then we have to and then we have to buy a hotel room and flights, and that's all really expensive. We'd rather spend that on like BDRs, cold calling people. I'm like, that is the opposite way of how this industry works. And
You figured this out really early, and you locked on, and it's working.
Yeah, I figured this out early, and again, like the creative control too for our brand, it looks like a metal brand, right? Like Arcanum font looks like
It's just
Metallica
awesome.
font, and
The purple.
the purple and the Spectre logo, and all this stuff was like, before I used to have to go in front of a, like a panel of people, the CEO, the CTO, the the marketer, the brander, and be like, here's my idea for this cool thing. I know it'll crush all of our competition. And they'd be like, I don't know, I don't like that. And I'm like, I know the security industry. Like, this is what they want. Like, they want cool shit. Like, another example is like when we put our name out there with the, like, it looks like a Metallica font, right? So it says Arcanum, right? We don't put our website. We don't put anything. The goal is for you to wear our shirt, that you could just wear it out every day. And nobody knows you're marketing a security company. And many people are very anti that. They're like, you have to have your website. You have to have something to tie people back. And I'm like, no, eventually someone's going to ask that person, where did you get that badass shirt? And they're going to be like, oh, I went to a security conference. There's actually this hacking outfit that does training called Arcanum. That person works in IT. They're like, oh, I'll go check that out. And it's like word of mouth, basically.
In the meantime, it just looks cool.
And it just looks cool. You wear the shirt every day. And so like there are a whole bunch of like micro tricks like that inside of marketing, branding, having an opinion, building a company, that I feel like I have just seen regular marketing people from other domains just come in and not get in the security industry. And so that's why it works for us, I feel like. Yeah.
Well, dude, we finally did it.
We did. We sat down and did a thing. Actually, I think three last RSAs were like, we should just go up to the room and record something.
We've talked about, so what will happen is we'll get on the phone.
Yeah.
And we'll do exactly this.
Yeah.
Fuck, we should have recorded. We should have recorded that. Yeah. That's happened 29 times.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're like, no, we got to get on the mic and we got to do it. And it's like never happened.
Yeah.
We did the one for a vendor.
Yeah.
But that wasn't this.
Yeah. Okay, I got one for you before we leave though. So your opinion on Thunderbolts. We went to go see the new Marvel movie 2 nights ago.
I'm struggling.
Tell the people.
I'm struggling.
Oh, I loved it.
So I liked the main character.
Okay.
I liked Johansson's sister.
Yeah.
She was like the strength, the father-daughter thing.
The father-daughter thing was strong, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't know. I just like so many things about the old franchise.
Yeah.
I just feel sad.
Yeah.
When I think that like they're not around anymore.
Yeah.
First, I have a question. Where'd they go?
I don't know.
Why can't they come back?
I think Thor left off planet because he has like a daughter now, right? And he's on like other planets, like saving them, not Earth.
Okay, so multiverse freaks me out.
Yeah, the multiverse I was not super down with, honestly. Like,
here's my problem with the multiverse. It invalidates death. It invalidates things you're supposed to care about before.
Yeah.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah, if someone can like snap and just people come back, I'm like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, it's also just hard to keep up all the different multiverse plot lines and
is that person alive or dead? Well, not in this universe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were talking about the differences between comic adaptations of comics and movies, and then what actually happens in the comic books. Pretty much, I feel like is universally better in the comics, except for a couple things. I think that there have been a couple movies that they've done origin stories that were better than the comics. But we were talking about Bane and how much different Bane is in the comics versus
Superman too.
Yeah, Superman too. Yeah, how different the death or not death of Batman, but the breaking of Batman was in the comics with Bane versus the movies, and then the death of Superman in pretty much everything. Like there was a whole bunch of stuff that I guess you just don't have time to do. Like basically like before Doomsday killed Superman in the comics.
Spoiler.
I mean, if you haven't read the comics, you should. But this is when I was a kid. I mean, Doomsday ran amok in America, like, and he wrecked every single person in the Justice League, just like slapped them down. And so that like builds this context of like 6 issues up to the point where you're like, oh man, the only person that's going to be able to stop this villain.
Yep.
The combined might of the Justice League has done nothing. It's only going to be Superman.
Yeah.
And so like it breeds this, like up and coming crescendo of battle. And then, you have the epic battle between Doomsday and Superman, and he dies. And one of the things I like to talk about is when I was a kid, that issue came in a plastic bag with the Superman logo with blood dripping down it.
No
And
way.
included in the plastic bag was the comic of his death. It was all about his funeral, him dying, the world without Superman, and it came with a black armband with the Superman logo on it, so
No
you could mourn
way.
him. And it was made of like vinyl, and so you could put it on your arm. I wore that to school that day when Superman died. And so some of
Damn.
my nerd friends did too. It was
And you were Superman in your wedding.
I was Superman at my wedding. We all wore superhero
Yeah.
shirts under things. I was Superman, and we were talking. Oh, we watched that video last night of like the iterations of all the Supermen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There are a couple Supermen I've never seen before, by the way.
Yeah,
Like,
and you're getting me on the one that you like.
yeah, Superman and Lois,
Yeah.
the two season one, I thought was fantastic. I think he's one of the best Supermans I've ever seen. And then I'm getting you on Arcane too.
Yeah, that's right.
Arcane is fantastic.
Like in a few
like
minutes.
in a few, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you wanted some nerd segment, that was, yeah.
And then a week from now, we go on our spiritual retreat.
We do. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
And can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, we do EDC every year in Las Vegas. It's 3 days where we try not to talk about work.
Yep.
And just listen to music and be best friends outside of that. I highly recommend for any of you who have, friends who sit in the industry and you kind of go and hang out with them. You end up talking a lot about InfoSec and work to plan something that's not work related. Like you and I have EDC, and I'm trying to build something with Kev where I go to like a Comic-Con.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to come if you want. But
I've been once, I think.
yeah, I like Comic Cons
Yeah.
a lot, but just that activity of doing something outside of InfoSec is really nice. So
Yeah, and then we start with work, but really it ends up being like life plans.
yeah,
And how
yeah.
we're helping each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, dude, this was
it
fantastic.
was awesome. Yeah. Hopefully,
Hopefully it was recording.
yeah. I see the little thing. So yeah, for sure.